Hello everyone, I welcome you all to this part 2 of the discussion on Raja Rao's famous novel The Serpent and the Rope. Let's look at the first sentence of the novel. The novel begins with the sentence, starting quotes, I was born a Brahmin that is devoted to truth and all that, end quote. Notice that and all that in the sentence. It's self-deprecating, almost wry. A Brahmin devoted to truth and all the baggage that comes with it. The comedy and the tragedy of being born into a tradition that claims to know the absolute while living the very ordinary, very messy life of a human being. He continues in one of the most beautiful passages of the opening. There were others, so I am told, who left hearth and riverside fields and wandered to mountains distant and hermitages to see God face to face. And some of them did see God face to face and built temples. But when they died, for indeed they did die, they too must have been burnt by tank or grove or meeting of two rivers, and they too must have known they did not die. I can feel them in me and know they knew they did not die. Who is it that tells me they did not die? Who but me? Feel that last turn? Who tells me they did not die? Who but me? Rama is not just narrating his ancestors, he is claiming continuity with them, a consciousness that passes through generations without death. He is the rope speaking about itself. And then immediately the orphan. I was born an orphan and have remained one. I have wandered the world and have sobbed in hotel rooms and in trains, have looked at the cold mountains and sobbed, for I had no mother. This is not contradiction, this is the duality of Brahmanism made flesh. One sentence away from cosmic consciousness and in the next, weeping on a mountain. This is Rama, this is the whole novel. Now Ramaswamy, who is called Rama throughout, he is the narrator and protagonist. He is eldest son of an orthodox Brahmin family from Hariharpura in South India. A historian in France researching the Albigensian heresy, the medieval Catholic sect, which he believes has Indian, specifically Buddhist and Jain roots. He wants to prove Indian thought seeded European mysticism. He is a man of extraordinary intellectual range and almost pathological self-awareness. He thinks, feels, and reflects constantly on the nature of reality, the nature of love, the nature of death. He does not quite live, he witnesses his own living. He describes himself this way. I'm quoting, and since I could not be a prince, I was born a Brahmin, and so how could I be king? I wandered my life away and became a holy vagabond. And then, in one of those moments that stops you mid-page, again quoting, left to myself, I became alone and full of love. When one is alone, one always loves. In fact, it is because one loves and one is alone, one does not die. Read that again. When one is alone, one always loves. This is not the loneliness of a sad man. This is the Vedantic insight that the separate self, the self that believes it is alone, cut off from the world, is the very condition in which love becomes possible, because love is the reaching across the apparent divide. And when you are fully alone, you can love everything, because there's nothing not to love. The next important character is Madeleine. She is Rama's French wife, blonde, beautiful, virtuous. They met at the University of Caen. She is a historian too of the same intellectual caliber, which is part of what draws them together. Rama describes her with an image that is itself a philosophical statement, and I'm quoting, her hair was gold and her skin for an Indian was like the unearthed marble with which we built our winter palaces. Cool with the lake about one and the peacock strutting in the garden below. Seeing oneself is what we always seek. The world, as the great sage Shankara said, is like a city seen in a mirror. Madeleine was like the palace of amber seen in moonlight. There is such a luminous mystery. The deeper you go, the more you know yourself. End quote. Madeline is not just a woman Rama loves. She is, in his perception, a mirror. The deeper you go into her, the more you know yourself. This is both romantic and, from Madeline's perspective, a little terrible. To be loved as a mirror, to be loved for what you reveal in the other person rather than for yourself. She understood this. In a letter she writes to Rama, one of the most piercing passages in the novel, she says, and I'm quoting, "Your heart was so like a mountain stream, its tenderness so pure. I loved to bathe in it. But how cruel it can be, how exasperating for a European. You people are sentimental about the invisible, we about the visible. And to me you were the invisible made concrete, so visible, incarnate beside me and my husband." End quote. She loved him for the same qualities that made him impossible to live with. The invisible made concrete. A husband who was also somehow an abstraction. Their son Pierre, whom Madeline also called Krishna, is born and dies of bronchopneumonia. The death cracks Madeline. She turns toward Buddhism. She's always searching for a container to hold her grief, and Rama keeps showing her the sky when she needs walls. Madeline also has this beautiful melancholy symbol woven through her. She loved bridges, but she could never cross them. I'm quoting from the novel. Like all melancholic people, Madeline loved bridges. She felt truth was always on the other side. The bridge was never crossed. Madeline had a horror of crossing bridges. End quote. Think about what this means. She believes truth is on the other side, that there is something beyond the visible world that she is reaching toward. But she cannot cross over. She cannot make up the leap from vyavharik to paramarthik, from the world of the practical to the world of the absolute. She stays on the near bank, and Pierre, Krishna, died before he could make the crossing either. Again quoting from the novel, "Whether the gunfire went off or not, Krishna could never cross the bridge of life." End quote. Next important character in the novel is Savitri. She is the princess of Surajpur, eldest daughter of Raja Raghubir Singh. She was sent to Cambridge, is engaged to Pratap Singh through family arrangement, and is everything Madeline is not. Indian, aristocratic, passionate, impetuous. She smokes, she knows Marx, but she also knows Sanskrit. And when she and Rama are together, something ancient awakens. She calls him my love and my lord. At their parting, after the ritual marriage scene in London, she says something to Rama that is a cryptogram, and he calls it, and I'm quoting from the novel, Parvati says she will come to Shiva when Shiva is so lost in meditation that were he to open his eyes, the three worlds would burn. I'll come when you don't need me, when you can live without me, O Cenobite. End quote. She will come to him when he no longer needs her, when he is Shiva, complete in himself, the meditating absolute. She is Parvati, the world embodied, returning to Shiva not to fill his emptiness but to dance in his fullness. This is not ordinary love talk. This is a woman who understands Vedanta and who is offering Rama with great clarity and great pain the precise condition for their union, a union that may only be possible in another life or beyond lives entirely. Another character in the novel is Little Mother, that's Rama's third stepmother, who loves him with uncomplicated maternal devotion. A warm, traditional South Indian widow, she anchors Rama to his roots every time he returns to India. It is she who gives him the simplest teaching in the novel. When she sees photographs of Madeline and the dead baby Pierre, she says nothing. She goes inside to her sanctuary and lays flowers on her Ramayana. And then when she sees Rama sad, she says, birth and death are the illusions of the non-self. No philosophy lecture, no lengthy explanation, just that. And she starts singing the whole day. Another character is Saroja, that's Rama's younger half-sister. 17 when he returns from Europe, he is overwhelmed by her. Quoting from the novel, what a deep and reverential mystery womanhood is. I could bow before Saroja and call her queen." End quote. And when he leaves for France again, she gives him a sari for Madeline. In the moment of receiving it, something extraordinary happens to him. Again quoting, "It was not Saroja I felt and smelt, but something of the Ganges and the Jamna that rose into my very being. Banaras was indeed nowhere but inside oneself." End quote. Banaras is nowhere but inside oneself. Not a city, a state of consciousness, and he finds it for a moment in his sister's gesture. Another character is Georges. He's a young Russian, French, Roman Catholic intellectual, missing one arm from a gun battle, teaching Latin, studying Chinese, drawn to Vedanta. He's Rama's closest Western intellectual companion. He becomes the novel's translator, putting Rama's thesis into French. And in the final pages, it is Georges who first takes Rama to the Vedantins in Paris without knowing what he's doing. So these were the characters, at least the major ones. Let me give you the plot outline of the story. The plot of The Serpent and the Rope is deliberately anticlimactic. It does not have a conventional story arc because for Raja Rao, the conventional story arc is itself a Western cause and effect way of understanding life, and that's precisely what he's questioning. Life is not a straight line. As Rama says of history itself, and I'm quoting from the novel, "History is not a straight line, it is not even a curved line. History is a straight line turned into a round circle. It has no beginning, it has no end, it is a movement without itself moving." End quote. But here is the shape of events. What happens? Rama is a Brahmin scholar in France researching the Albigensian heresy, married to Madeline. Their son Pierre is born and dies. The marriage begins. Beneath its surface there is affection, but it quietly comes apart. Rama returns to India to take his family, little mother and his infant brother Sridhar, to Banaras for his father's funeral rites. This long journey through the Gangetic Plain is one of the great set pieces of the novel. Part pilgrimage, part LG, part meditation. In Allahabad, he meets Pratap Singh, who introduces him to Savitri. He returns to Aix and Provence. Things are wrong with Madeline. There is, as Rama notes, a new bitterness. She's drawn to Buddhism through conversations with Lezo, a refugee Basque Sanskrit scholar. She's drawn to Georges. Savitri comes to stay with Rama and Madeline. Madeline says of her, "She's not real. She lives in a world of fantasy, a dream." And when Savitri leaves, Madeline's verdict becomes almost a lament. It is 3,000 years of civilization that produces a thing like her. Rama goes to London for research. He begins to spend time with Savitri. They walk along the river Cam. She reveals a sympathy with communism, having seen the suffering of the poor in North India. And then one morning she comes to his room. She performs a puja. He applies kumkum on her parting. He brings out the coconut and the betel nuts and the toe rings that little mother had prepared for his bride. Quoting from the novel, "And the Lord knows himself because Radha is, else he would have gone into penance and sat on Himalaya. And this, my love, my spouse," he whispers, "is from my home. This is coconut, this is betel nut, this is kumkum, and these the toe rings my mother bare and left for my bridal." A ritual marriage, half real, half symbolic. Savitri departs. The toe rings, he notes with extraordinary economy, were the precise size for her. Little mother was right. For Madeline, they would have been too big. One sentence, the whole story of why Madeline and Rama cannot be. Then Madeline's second child dies, a cesarean in France while Rama is in India. Savitri, back in Delhi, urges Rama to marry her. He declines and she marries Pratap Singh. Then comes the great philosophical confrontation between Rama and Madeline, her asking from a sickbed, "What is it separated us, Rama?" And his answer, "India." Their exchange becomes one of the most philosophically dense dialogues in the novel, ending with a quiet devastation. One can never be converted to Hinduism. One can only be born an Indian. Madeline asks for a divorce. Catherine witnesses the papers. And in the final pages, Rama finds his direction. Not Banaras anymore, not the Ganga, not the Jumna, but Travancore. This is the basic plot outline. Now let's talk about the duality of Brahman in the novel. Now here is where the novel gets philosophically electric. Rama is a Brahmin, his very name is the name of the god king, the perfect avatar. But he has crossed the seas, he has married a European, he has no sacred thread. When the Brahmins of Banaras discover this, they refuse to perform their funeral rites for his father until little mother produces 50 silver rupees and suddenly everything is holy. The sacred and the mercantile woven together. But Rao is not simply mocking the Brahmins, he is showing the gap between the ideal of the Brahmin and the social institution of the Brahmin. Rama's grandfather Kitana understood this. When Rama asks him about the funeral ceremonies, Kitana says, "Why change it today? Why give importance to unimportant things? God is not hidden in a formula, nor is affection confined to funeral ceremonies. Be what you are. I like the way you go about thinking on the more serious things of Vedanta. Leave religion to smelly old fogies like me." This is remarkable. The grandfather himself, the most traditionally Brahmin figure in the novel, is one who sees most clearly that the ritual is not the reality. The rope is not the serpent. Rama embodies this duality most painfully in his relationship to his own emotions. He loved his mother, but she died when he was 7. He does not understand death. He knows the philosophy, I must first believe there is death, but the doctrine and the grief do not meet cleanly. And his father, quoting from the novel, "I have little to tell you of my father's death, except that I did not love him, but that after he died I knew him and loved him when his body was such pure white spread ash. Even now I have dreams of him saying to me, 'Son, why did you not love me, you, my eldest son?' I cannot repent, as I do not know what repentance is. For I must first believe there is death, and that is the central fact. I do not believe that death is." End quote. He loves best what is no longer there. He loves the ash, he loves the memory, he loves what has already dissolved back into the absolute. This is both the beauty and the tragedy of Rama. It is also Banaras. Listen to how he describes Banaras in the surrealist postcard passage. "You never know where reality starts and where illusion ends. Whether the Brahmins of Banaras are like the crows asking for funeral rice balls, saying cow, cow, or like the sadhus by their fires, lost in such beautiful magnanimity, as though love were not something one gave to another, but one gave to oneself." End quote. Love given to oneself. Not narcissism, the Vedantic understanding that there is no other, fundamentally, that love is the motion of the self recognizing the self. Banaras is the city where this teaching is not abstract but lived every hour on every ghat amid the cremations and the crows and the concubines. And Banaras, Rama comes to understand, is not a place. He says, Banaras was indeed nowhere but inside oneself. Let's talk about the East-West duality in the novel, Madeline and Rama's worldviews. The deepest clash in the novel is not dramatic. It happens in small moments, in the way Madeline and Rama perceive differently. Madeline says, "You people are sentimental about the invisible, we about the visible." This one sentence is the whole divide. She grieves for Pierre as Pierre, a specific, visible, touchable child. Rama perceives Pierre as the self moving through a temporary form. Both are real, but they are real in incompatible ways. Rama's father had a philosopher's joke about philosophy itself. Quoting from the novel, "Father had no use for philosophy at all. He called it the old hag's description of the menu in paradise. For him, curry of cucumber or of pumpkin made no difference to your intestines. The important fact is that you eat and you live." End quote. His father was a mathematician, real and solid, and Rama, his philosopher's son, is the old hag's menu reader. Completely real to himself, baffling to everyone who loves him. The novel gives us this aphorism from Rama almost casually. He says, affection is just a spot in the geography of the mind. And then right after it, he thinks of Madeline with such warmth and detail. Her Savoyard ancestry, her lavender-smelling hair, her indignation at injustice, her love of ancient Greece, that the aphorism feels almost cruel, because he does love her. He just cannot quite be fully present to her. He's always slightly elsewhere. And she knew it. She knew she was loving a man whose attention was perpetually aimed at something she could not see. Quoting from the novel, seeing oneself is what we always seek. The world, as the great sage Shankara said, is like a city seen in a mirror. The world is a city seen in a mirror. You can see it, move through it, live in it. But it is not the city, it is the reflection. Rama lives in the reflection while always half aware looking for the original. Here is his most agonized admission about this. On the banks of the Ganges, he remembers the sage Yagnavalkya's teaching. For whose sake verily does a husband love his wife? Not for the sake of his wife, but verily for the sake of the self in her. And then he asks himself, do I love the self in Madeline? And answers, I knew I did not. I knew I could not love, that I did not even love Pierre. He takes a handful of Ganges water in his hand and pours it back to the river. It was for Pierre. That gesture, that pouring of water, it is the most honest thing Rama does in the entire novel. An offering to the boy he could not love the way Pierre needed to be loved. Loved as Pierre, not as the self in Pierre. So that's the end of part 2. In part 3, we will see how Rama begins to transcend this duality, not by solving it intellectually, by turning toward the Guru. We'll fully unpack the title, look at the ending, and ask what the novel is ultimately saying about love, liberation, and the long white road. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.